This is lesson 6 on page 109, finalizing a project plan. You have created a project plan by creating a work breakdown structure and adding the resources needed to complete the project. Now that you have a plan, you need to review it to see if it meets your needs. Often, a first attempt at the project plan stretches beyond a key deadline or has areas that can be optimized to decrease work and cost. Finally, you will need to prepare for executing the project and share your final plan with stakeholders and team members. In this lesson, you will optimize a project using the critical path, you will set a baseline, and share the project plan with stakeholders. So topic A is optimizing a project plan. Every task is important, but those tasks that directly determine the total duration of the project are especially critical. In this topic, you will discuss how to identify those tasks and then modify them to optimize the overall project plan. The critical path is the longest path of linked tasks in a project, calculated by summing the durations of the individual tasks in the path, then determines the duration of the project. The critical tasks drive the end date of the project. In other words, the project duration cannot be shorter than the total duration of the tasks in the critical path. Generally, a project has a single critical path, but it may have more than one. Project automatically calculates the critical path for you. In both the Gantt chart and the network diagram views, tasks on the critical path are depicted in red. Now, this is not by default, but you can configure it so your critical path is shown. If you want to show which tasks in your task entry table fall on the critical path, you would go up to your View tab, and in your Data Command group, here where it says No Highlight, from this drop-down, you would select Critical from here. And you can see it highlights them in yellow for you. So these fall on the critical path. These are what affects the actual end date of your project plan. Now, looking at the Gantt chart view, you can see some tasks are on like a main direct line here, and you can see with some of them they kind of go off on little tangents of their own. So some tasks can be occurring at the same time as others. Now, if we wanted to highlight the critical path in our Gantt chart, I can go up to my Format Contextual tab, and in my Bar Styles command group, if I check off critical tasks, it's going to highlight that critical path in red. And you can see, it's like the main pathway, and this is what drives the end date for your project. Okay? Taking in the total durations of all your critical tasks will give you your full duration of the project plan. Anything that's on the blue line is not going to affect your end date in any way. Because again, they can be occurring at the same time as other tasks, and they will not affect it. They kind of go off again on little tangents on their own, and eventually end before the end date. So they do not have an effect there. So this is an example of how to highlight your critical tasks and highlight your critical path in your Gantt chart view. All right, page 93, Methods of Optimizing a Project Plan. Once you understand your project's critical path, you can make changes to the tasks and assignments of the path to optimize the overall project plan. For example, if a task is causing the duration to extend beyond a goal end date, you can add resources or modify the dependency of the task. You may be able to shorten the duration of a task by adding another person to complete the task, or you may realize that a task can start sooner than the finish date of its predecessor. If you have resources that are dedicated to your project, you may wish to review their assignments to see if there are times when they are not working on a task and can be assigned to help on a task on the critical path. You may also want to review those resources which are scarce or expensive to optimize their usage. Finally, you may decide to reduce the scope of the project and remove or shorten some tasks as a result. All right, so again, just to repeat, these are the tasks that are going to affect your end date. So if you take a look at these as you're analyzing your project and take a look at the resources that are assigned to them, maybe you can add additional resources to shorten the duration. Shortening the duration of one task can have a major effect on your project end date. Okay, so being able to actually depict which ones drive the critical path is very important. All right, the bottom of page 93, effort-driven tasks. In an effort-driven task, the work required to complete the task is constant even if the number of resources is changed. For example, packing boxes is a task that could be shortened by adding additional resources, but the amount of work or effort will not change. Not all tasks are effort-driven. For example, when you bake a cake, the amount of time that the cake needs to bake in the oven cannot be changed by adding resources. You can decide for each task whether it should be effort-driven or not. And to do that, you would go to your resource sheet view to see all of your resources. And if a resource is not effort-driven, if we double-click it, let me see, am I on the right one here? Maybe not. I think I'm in the wrong one. Hold on. Well, maybe I should be in my Gantt chart view. I apologize. Let me switch back to Gantt chart and take a look at the task here. There we go. Yeah, if you open up a task and then go to your Advanced tab, you can see here this is an effort-driven task. So if it by chance is not, you can go here and uncheck it, and that will have an effect on your end date as well. It might shorten the duration of that particular task. All right, page 94, duration versus work. In project management, duration and work are not the same thing. Duration is the number of working time periods, seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, or years, from the beginning of a task until its end. Work is the duration of a task multiplied by the level of effort by the resources assigned to the task. For example, if the task Write Grant Proposal has a duration of 5 days and the resource Emma will give 75% of her effort to the task, then the work is actually 3.75 days. So that's 75% times 5 days gives you the work. For tasks that require a fixed amount of work, the duration of the task can be decreased by adding more level of effort by resources. For example, if the task Debug Program has a duration of 10 days and a single programmer is assigned to the task at a 100% level of effort, then assigning another programmer to the same task at a 100% level of effort should reduce the duration of the task to 5 days. So again, doubling that level of effort is going to cut in half the amount of the duration of the task. So having more resources on a specific task is actually going to cut the time, obviously. All right, so we'll take a look at some examples of this coming up in our next activity, activity 5.1 on page. That's going to be activity 6.1 on page 113, which is optimizing a project plan.